Hey everybody, it's so good to be back. We had a little bit of a break and I'll explain that in a second, but I just want to say thank you so much for even listening to this episode. It's been so cool just to see everything the Bearded Tog has become and the people that listen to it and you guys emailing me and just taking those bold steps that we didn't have in our businesses when I started. And so let's just get to it, man. I'm excited to be back. We've got an awesome episode, and I have good news I can't wait to tell you. So, had a little bit of a break. If you didn't know, I got married, and then I've just been shooting so much. I did 2 international trips, and honestly, I wanted the Bearded Tog to be better than it ever has been, and I wanted to make sure that it could be consistent for you guys. I wanted it to be awesome. And we moved, and so I was kind of concerned about the sound quality in a different room, but everybody was like, Adam, done is better than perfect, and so we're going for it. We're doing it. Let me know what you think, and let's go. So first thing, I am launching mentoring, website review. I'm giving away all my editing and business know-how, similar to the Bearded Tog, but in a kind of a visual sense, so you can kind of see how I edit and stuff like that on Patreon, and limited to you guys today. There are 20 spots open, and the cost is insanely cheap. It's $3. So for cheaper than a cup of cold brew, you can get, I'm giving away all my editing stuff on Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. So yeah, it's going to be absolutely awesome. And I'm going to keep that updated probably every week. And you can ask questions. We can talk about things that are maybe you're less inclined to email me about, or you want to get a little bit more people to talk to. It's going to be awesome, and I think it's going to be where we can determine where the Bearded Tog goes. It's going to be awesome. So there's early access just for you guys, only 20 spots. And then, of course, if you want, there's other options and stuff like that. If you're familiar with Patreon, lots of podcasters use it. It's awesome. So go join, say hi, let me know what you think, how it could be better, and let's make this work. But mentoring is in there, editing is in there, all these episodes are in there, so it's awesome. Also, we're going to try to come out weekly. We're going to do Wednesdays, I think, for the Bearded Tog episodes, and they're going to be awesome. So we're going to try weekly with that. And then lastly, I'm really excited about this interview. It's Zoe Rain, who is Macklemore's photographer. She's shot for Ed Sheeran. She's shot for everybody, Chance the Rapper, Miley Cyrus. Like, she's just a cool person, too. Like, she's into music, and I just love her. I started out as a music photographer, and she's taken it much further than I could ever go. And she's just got amazing insight. So for folks who are thinking about, like, how do I shoot for free? Or when do I know when is the right time to, like, put my name out there and stuff like that? Zoe has good insight because the music industry is kind of a quirky one. And she's just got amazing insight. So let's get into it. First episode back, the Bearded Tog. Let's go. Here's Zoe Rain. How's it going? What are you doing today?
I just got back from LA, so I'm drinking coffee with my dog and starting to work. Not a bad day.
That's not a bad day at all. And you're in Chicago, right? Yeah. What made you move from Seattle?
I met a group of people here when I was on tour with Macklemore, and just kind of connected with them, and then connected with the city really immediately, and needed a change. So it ended up being a great spot to start my journey.
So tell me a little bit more about, like, how did you get started into photography, and, like, how long have you been doing it? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I did photography as a kid and enjoyed it, but never really thought it was something that I could pursue as a career. I took the class in high school just to kind of get like an Occ-Ed credit to graduate. I enjoyed it, but I never was pursuing that as like my passion. And I ended up missing a few classes and definitely failing, being on the verge of failing that photography class. And my mentor now, at the time, his name's Jason Koenig. He came in to help some kids kind of pass and like just teach everyone that you can be a professional at photography. So then I kind of started working for him part-time and assisting on weddings and sorting through his pictures. So that's really how I started learning and getting better, and then kind of realizing that I could start a business doing this. So in high school, I would shoot like senior portraits and started getting my own weddings. And that's kind of where that started to become my major income source.
Yeah. And did you just kind of, was like college off the table and you were kind of like, hey, this is bringing in money. And then also I assumed you enjoyed it. What was like your thought process behind that?
Yeah. I mean, at the time, like I used to be a very like model student and I take tests really well and all that, but I was going through a lot of like family stuff where I wasn't pursuing academics as tough as I used to be. So college wasn't necessarily, I didn't really have a plan. But I did go to college for photography at Seattle Central Community College, which is actually a really great program in Seattle. So I went there, but no 4-year college or anything.
Okay. That's super cool. That's awesome. And then, what was kind of that like, what year was that when you were, primarily in business? And then what year, like, how did you get into, going on tour with a band, Macklemore specifically, or were there other bands before that?
I started out shooting Macklemore shows in high school. So my senior year, I really kind of got in with them. Jason, again, brought me to one of their shows, and that's the first time I used a professional camera. And I think like the first show was at the Nectar Lounge in Seattle, and they had probably like 100 people there. But that's kind of how I started to learn. And the band was doing some music videos, so I would just stick around and try to shoot things, even just for like high school class assignments. And then eventually, once I was out of school for a year, that was 2011, I graduated. 2012, and then 2013 was when they had that first big tour. So that's kind of when I went on the road with them. But I would shoot other bands, but they were my primary start into the music industry.
That's awesome. That's what was like the smallest Macklemore show that you shot?
I mean, it was probably that first one that I shot at Nectar Lounge, but
yeah.
I think it had 100 people on the ground, and then I wasn't even 21, so I actually wasn't supposed to be in there because it was a 21 and over show, but there were people in the bar that I couldn't get up to the second level because I didn't have an ID.
That is hilarious. That's so funny. That's cool. That's awesome. And then kind of like how long were you with Macklemore? I actually I'm pretty sure you were on the tour that I saw was the tour after the heist. And yeah, like how long were you there? And then, what kind of has come up from after that?
Yeah. So we had the 2013 tour, which was the big heist tour that kind of ended. We did a month in Europe, 2 months in the US, and it ended in LA for the Grammys. So I ended up sneaking to the Grammys with them and shooting that. And then they kind of had a long break of writing and recording for their next album, which I would shoot, them doing random things or press photos, but kind of worked on my own stuff. And then they had their second tour, which was just this last year, so 2016. And that finished up, and they've kind of been in that recording, writing session again. And since I'm in Chicago, I've just been, shooting a lot of other things. I love shooting music, but it's not my primary focus anymore. I think I've exhausted that. That portfolio. I need to kind of build up my fashion and editorial stuff. So just trying to learn more studio work, especially just kind of to be able to do more refined portraits of artists instead of the live show stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think is just becoming a better photographer your mindset behind that, or are you just being on tour is it's like a full-fledged commitment to music photography or whatever? Do you feel like that's just not it doesn't tickle your funny bone as much anymore because you did it's pretty much as big as you can get, or what's kind of the mindset, or is it just because you kind of want to make better art for yourself?
Yeah, I think I felt like I had reached, it is exhausting, and I felt like I definitely need a break from that live show work, but I just felt like I was being lazy and kind of reached a cap where I felt like, all right, I'm good at this. I can really I feel really confident that I can shoot live shows really well, and it's not as much of a challenge anymore. And I think I never really want to feel so content that I'm not really pushing myself to do things that are out of my comfort zone. So I think we're starting to do like more studio work and just other variations of the photography world is how I can kind of keep it fresh and make sure that like my skills are refined, not only in a photojournalistic style, but in, a studio or a post-processing style as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you been shooting lately that's been really, really fun?
Actually just moved into a giant loft. We call it the Rain Studio, and it is a work-live spot. So I edit all my photos here, and then I have a full studio to shoot in. So I've just been doing studio lighting and really kind of refining that. I mean, I worked on that a lot in college, but I haven't really had a chance or a space to be able to kind of work on those more refined portraits.
Yeah. And I feel like if it's already like in your house with you, you're like going to be a little bit more prone to do it. Whereas even if it was just a few blocks away, it's not as easy to be like, okay, I guess I'll work on this,
Totally. I have no excuse. And it's easy to get lazy and not want to do personal work if you're not being paid for it. But when the lights are all set up and it's all here, it's no big deal to just shoot for a few hours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about and you're totally welcome. So we had Andy Barron on an episode earlier before, and he's shot a ton of people. Like he was with Switchfoot and Foster the People and now a few like big country artists. And you don't have to like reveal anything, but I'm kind of trying to help other, people who might want to be into the music photography business, or like, can they even make it? Tell me a little bit more about like, if whatever about the kind of just like pricing and like, versus being on tour, or, you're shooting an artist like while they're in the studio. Like, how does that kind of work? Is that project based, or is that like retainer, or you're just like, hey, I'll cover this because it's fun? Totally.
I think starting out, especially, and a lot of stuff I do now, you're going to have to shoot a lot of stuff for free, which I don't necessarily agree with for larger scale stuff, for larger scale bands or larger scale companies. But to just like get in with the music industry, to make those connections, to kind of like have favors, you need to kind of give favors. So I really started out by shooting just everyone. Just I'll give you photos if you can give me a pass, and get some backstage stuff just to kind of build that portfolio and like practice on that. And then I think there is room to kind of start charging once you feel confident that you're going to be able to deliver a solid set of images in that kind of low light environment. But making money on music is hard. It's definitely possible, especially if you do get the chance to be on a longer time scale tour with a band. I would just get paid like a flat weekly rate to shoot and just kind of be available. But a lot of shows, most bands just don't have a lot of money to pay, and that's just the reality of it. And there are events like the Red Bull Sound Selects, or kind of things that are thrown by brands to have artists, where those are a lot more of a business opportunity if you're trying to, build your portfolio and also pay your rent. But you just kind of have to like subsidize that income in a different way and figure out what's worth shooting for free to add to your portfolio versus what is something that you need to be at least getting something for,
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when I shot music photography a little bit, it's like this balance of one, I just started like because I loved music and wanted to get into shows for free, honestly. And then, like, hey, I'll have the best photos from the show compared to people with like their phones or something like that. And, but the reality is that even the times I got paid, and I had some really cool opportunities where like artists would like buy the rights to my photos and all kinds of weird stuff. It was very difficult to like pay your rent with that. And it's also like, you have to it's such a kind of crazy industry because like, you know, like you enjoy Macklemore, you know, or Ben, and I assume, and like for me, I enjoyed all the musicians that I worked with, and so like I would want to do it for free anyway, you know, even though I know like the right business answer, you know, and like.
And I think that's where like a lot of photographers get taken advantage of because they see, I mean, those artists and those record companies, they know that like the photos are valuable to you. The experience is probably cool. Like obviously it's a fun job to go to a concert and shoot. Like there are plus sides to it where they're going to leverage that. And if you don't want the job, like there are 100 other kids that are going to shoot it for free. And I think a lot of times that's kind of can be put on the table as a, well, take it or leave it type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely like they know that there's like an upper hand, and like the larger the artist, the more they're trying to like distance themselves from, you know, having to pay or inquire and stuff like that. And I've heard terrible stories of like, you know, music photographers will like post the contract for really big artists, like and it's just like, hey, we own the photos and all this stuff and you don't get paid anything. And you know, that's scary too, because I think there's got to be some mutual relationship you know, between artist to artist, hopefully, you know, if each of them are good and respect each other, that like, you know, can be mutually beneficial. I don't know if that's what happened for you and Macklemore, but it seems like you really enjoyed your time.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely a unique relationship and scenario, not only because, I mean, because he kind of like fostered my art. So like I started as this young, like 15-year-old kid that didn't know what I was doing, and kind of I stuck around long enough where we built this relationship. And not only that, because he's independent and I'm not working through these larger kind of traditional old school record labels, it's just going to be a different relationship and scenario than these people that are, you know, in the business to make money and really kind of treat their artists more as this commodity than, you know, people, and don't really value like the art. I mean, most like Macklemore, he's spent 10 years trying to make money off of his art. So he really understands that, you know, how you got to get paid for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like a big testament. That's one of my favorite things about you, and I've been following your work for a while, is your story. And you're like, hey, like I hung out with this band that, you know, at the time, you know, did you think it was like when you were 15, did you think Macklemore would be what it is today? I mean, I was an immediate fan from that night. I remember the night I shot him, I had no idea who he was. And that was the release of their first EP together. So that was like the first show that Ryan and Ben played together. And I listened to that music on the way home, and I was like totally enamored with the music. And of course I had no idea that it was even possible to get to that level of fame in the amount of time that they did. But I was a fan, and I think that's really important, and that's really where like the passion comes. I don't really like shooting bands that I've never heard of. I'm usually just going to want to shoot bands that I'm a fan of. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I feel like, you know, for you, it's a good testament of just like starting small and, you know, go find that band that you enjoy, whether they're large or small, and just go for it. Or, you know, even if somebody didn't like the bands, is like, you can at least listen to the music and learn what the bands are about. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if that's what you want, and you go to a show that has 3 or 4 bands at it, and, you know, you kind of do your trade for release kind of thing. Like, I'm a big fan of like not working for free, but at the same time, like if you want to hustle to go do it and then make your portfolio like so outstanding that they want to pay you, you know, and it's like, just that kind of idea of like, hey, like here's another way that, you know, like I think at least for me, when I was in college, like they would never tell you, hey, go listen to the artist that you're going to shoot's music before you go shoot them. They'd just be like, oh, here's the lighting and stuff like that, which is super important. But it's like, I know I was on a tour, a big tour with Switchfoot, and I knew all their songs. And so like you feel more enveloped as an artist, and you can make better work. And then too, like, if the artist likes that work even better, like they have a lot of say in telling their label or whomever and being like, hey, we want this guy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you doing now? Like what, have there been other musicians that you've either toured with or just kind of worked with recently?
Yeah, I actually just, speaking of kind of working semi for free, I shot the behind the scenes for the new Ed Sheeran's video, Shape of You.
Yeah.
So they did that music video in Seattle, and I kind of hung around and did the behind the scenes because I knew it was going to be a big song, and obviously it's Ed Sheeran, so any images of him in my portfolio is going to be really beneficial to me. But besides kind of, I mean, I guess that worked because I took a portrait of him, and I put it out on my Instagram, and a few people saw it, and I've actually gotten quite a lot of money just from licensing to magazines and newspapers, kind of over European ones. But that free job that I did ended up getting me money back just in licensing. So I think there are ways to kind of, once you have the images, to hustle and get them to kind of monetize off of them.
Yeah, no, I love that. Can you talk a little bit more about, because I know you've shot some other artists that I want to kind of hear about, but like, tell me a little bit more about licensing. And did, I assume like Jason maybe had some influence in helping you out with that, or did you learn that yourself? And then what does that usually look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I learned definitely a lot from Jason as far as, don't give your photos out for free, and kind of realizing like where the budgets are and, how much he charges for photos and all that. So that really gave me the confidence to even ask for that licensing money. And then also a photographer, John Keeley, who's also in Seattle.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he does those survival guides. And I went to one, and it was a lot just about kind of invoicing and what you should be charging for and how much you should charge for licensing and all that. And kind of to include that within the value of your image, So if someone wants you to take photos and they want to put it on their Instagram, so you're not even only charging for the time that you shoot, the time that you edit, but also kind of that licensing ability for them to do that. But yeah, Keeley really helped me as far as realizing how much to charge. And also there's a lot of magazines that'll come to you and just say, we have $250 for this quarter page. That's what we pay. Can we use it? And so there's standard industry rates that you'll kind of notice and see. And I always just kind of bid high, and then people say, we can pay you $200 less. Does that work? And it's usually fine.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's good advice, because it's like, at least on the $250 quarter page standard, you can say yes or no.
Yeah.
But then also if you get the opportunity to pitch, whatever, that's the big thing I see that a lot of people don't understand is, we talk about this in another episode. We have an episode on pricing, and it's just like, I talk about the story of the Pepsi logo and how like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, they redid it, and the design firm charged $500,000 for the design logo. Mm. And, like design wise, it's a great logo, but it's not, right. No logo is going to make you be like, yeah, $500,000. But it was the idea of the usage and that it would be used everywhere, and it's by a huge brand, and like the certain things that, like go into designing something for a large brand, or like, one of your photos going into Rolling Stone versus, your friend is like, hey, I just kind of want a poster for my wall and I'm not going to tell anybody about it. Yeah. Or like a buddy of mine, he's a news photographer, and we always talk about like trading files, which I never knew was a thing. And he'll just be like, yeah, we trade files, and like, we just print them on our own for ourselves and just kind of trust each other. And I was like, whoa, that is insane. Uh-huh. But yeah, no, it's like, that's super good insight. I appreciate that. Are there any kind of licenses where like, are you still making money off of certain images, or is it still kind of like, hey, do you have any, we saw this image of so-and-so, you have it, like kind of like taking over old work, or does old work kind of like go to sleep eventually?
It's both. I mean, I think there are there's still tons of Macklemore ones that'll get seen and pulled. It's usually, there's a group of probably 20 pictures that people somehow just want to keep using or that are relevant. But it's kind of both. I think people will go on my website or see me post something old on Instagram and say, oh, you have this photo of Sam Smith from 3 years ago, but he's coming out with something, like, can we post this? Or But yeah, it's yeah. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, no worries. I was just kind of seeing like, how useful is certain old work, and I guess it depends on kind of like how big that work
Yeah,
was when it
on
was.
how big the artist is, and I think because artists go in those ebb and flows of being out in the press and then kind of hiding and creating new work. If they're, once they're picking up again in the media, those photos start to have more value again.
Definitely. No, that makes sense. What are you doing now? What other artists have you worked with other than Ed Sheeran? And then kind of like, what are you hoping to do this year, like work wise?
Yeah. I haven't toured with anyone crazy big. I've shot a bunch of stuff for Mary Lambert, who sang on The Same Love,
Yeah.
Macklemore, and then I also shot Ray Dalton, who sang on
Can't hold us.
So those are obviously friends on tour that need press photos every once in a while. That'll call me. I have shot some stuff for G-Eazy, just kind of for my own portfolio, and hoping again get those photos that might potentially need to be licensed by people. I've been shooting some Chicago people, not necessarily all rappers, but also kind of Malcolm London. He's a local social activist here who also is now kind of getting in the rap game. Kind of just more like social activists and people that are well known in the Chicago area. Again, just
Sure.
kind of build my community, and it's really easy to take a photo of someone that everyone knows, and once everyone asks them who took that photo, you immediately gain this sphere of people that know your name.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I've been trying to pursue, and just kind of getting to the level of recognition that I did get in Seattle with, being known as Macklemore's photographer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes sense. And I feel like too, it's similar to the bands. It's like good to get in with, not in like a using people case. Like obviously you enjoy these like social activists and stuff, but like getting in, and just getting to know them and taking those smaller opportunities, if you will, for a medium-sized brand or person. And then like you have that relationship. Like that's a big thing for me, is just like the cost of a relationship, which you had like with Macklemore and you're trying to establish with other people. Like there's a strategy behind that, both business and personal. Like the personal is really great and like pays off instantly because you're like shooting Macklemore or you're shooting this other thing. And, but business wise, those relationships can also be like crucial too. I think that's super cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the more and more I go on in this business and just in life in general, I do realize how true it is that it's all about who you know. I get so many jobs from just friends or people that I met at a party or, emailed once. It's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started in photography and even other hobbies, I used to hate the idea that it was who you know. I'm like, no, it should be how good you are. And like, but at the even like, say you have the greatest photo in the world, like if people who can't put that image in the best places, like if they don't see that, then it's like, it's not worth anything, yeah, that's super tough, but I think it's good too. Something I always tell people is like, every opportunity, if you get a really big opportunity, like say to shoot for Macklemore or something like that, or I've shot for Facebook a few times here in DC. And the first time I shot, I was covering for a friend, and the friend didn't tell me what the event was. And so I walk in and I'm thinking I'm shooting like a regular event in DC, and there's a large Facebook banner, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're getting serious now. And I just tried to do my best and make sure that they were happy. And they ended up hiring me like 15 times, throughout the next year. And people ask about that stuff all the time. And it's just like, there's a balance too of like, hey, make sure that you are good enough skill wise that if these cool opportunities come, like, and I know like, I love your work. And so like, but imagine if your work wasn't good and you got to shoot the BTS for Ed Sheeran and then it wasn't great or it didn't really go anywhere, Yeah. But now it's like, if you have those two things like going together, it's like a compound. I don't know. It like helps you out a lot more, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination. You need to know both for sure. But the thing is, there's so much content and so many photographers now. I mean, I think just with the access of higher end cameras that are cheaper and even iPhone cameras being really comparable, these days. Not only your work has to stand out, but you need to be someone that people want to work with. I mean, especially if you're an asshole on set, like no one's gonna. You could be the best photographer ever, or you could, still be starting out, like not be the best shooter, but make everyone feel at ease. You're gonna get hired. You're gonna be remembered for your behavior.
No, absolutely. I love that. Like people want to be when they hire a vendor, I feel like my biggest thing that I tell people is like, make yourself part of the team, like you're not just the hired gun, like find out what they need and find out what their goals are and be really supportive. Whereas like, I know a lot of times when we're starting out in photography, we don't go all in. Maybe that's the title of this episode, like going all in and having it pay off.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's super cool. So very cool. So you're doing portrait stuff now, trying to do a little bit more commercial and like hone those skills, which is super cool, and create relationships in Chicago, which is awesome. What's your favorite thing about Chicago so far, other than community?
The food. No.
What's your favorite food in Chicago?
I'm a big like tacos and margaritas girl. So I live in Pilsen, which is like the art district / a bunch of like really authentic Mexican food and community. So
that is awesome.
I leave my house and I get tacos all the time.
Wow, that sounds so magical. Oh man, that's awesome. We'll have to get tacos in Chicago sometime.
Absolutely.
So, what other advice would you have for anybody like getting into music photography, if anything? Anything we didn't touch on today, or anything that you like see that people do wrong often?
I mean, I guess it's hard to make your work stand out, especially when you're kind of getting this like small access in the pit to start out. But trying to shoot things that people aren't shooting, I used to challenge myself on tour with Ben when we'd have the first 3 songs be open to press photographers, and they'd always be shooting kind of one thing in one angle, and everyone would try to get this one shot. And so I would always force myself to like walk as far away from everyone as I could and shoot from that angle, just to kind of like, you don't want to have the same shot that everyone has or the same editing style. I mean, you really just trying to like experiment and have your color palette or the way you shoot or something about you has to stand out, because there's so many people that are shooting the same angle, putting the same filter on it, and trying to be noticed when there's really nothing unique about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something similar I did on tour too. It's just because like, especially if you're on the tour, you're seeing a very similar show every night, and your job is to like, you're making photos for Ben, and like, I think that you want to see a variety and give a variety. And so I think that's super smart. That's awesome. So something kind of fun. I'm just going to ask you 2 questions that are kind of like, I try to ask everybody, that are really lighthearted. They're not as intense as like us talking about making it, if you will. What content, like book or show or anything, are you consuming right now that you love? It could be music too.
I'm constantly listening to a bunch of new music, but I just love hip hop music. So I've been really into that. I mean, obviously like Frank Ocean's new album, and
okay.
Gosh, there's so many. I need to just look on my phone for all this stuff. I'm always just like on Spotify trying to find new artists and going into kind of a rabbit hole of every day, just looking for new music to vibe to.
Sure.
What else, man? I'm constantly on like Pinterest or Tumblr, just trying to consume as much like photography as I possibly can. And I don't know.
No, that's awesome. That's super cool. And then another question is like, what's one goal that you have for 2017?
Well, actually, I had a minor goal that might be coming true. I wanted to shoot something kind of for nonprofit or something to give back, especially just because this world's so fucked up this year that I want to be able to use my gift to do some sort of good. And I'm actually possibly in like 4 days going to Cambodia to shoot for an organization called Construction for Change, which constructs schools and other buildings in lower income third world countries. So we're going to go and kind of take a bunch of photos, and then those photos are printed and sold at a big kind of donation banquet that raises money for that organization every year.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Well, I love that. International trips are always like, I think in 4 days we're leaving.
So, like, holy crap! All right, I have to go get my shots. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That's awesome. That's super cool. I've been to Ethiopia and South Africa, and that's actually how I got into photography. Was like I was doing international nonprofit work for those two countries, and then I've been some places in South America, like trying to just take photos of people who had never had their image taken before. That's cool.
But yeah, I did that actually right around the same time I started going to photography class. I must have been a sophomore in high school. My mom took us to Kenya for like 2 weeks, and I just
that's awesome.
got it was a Nikon D90, like nothing special, but I just
that was my first camera.
Yeah, too.
Oh, buddies.
I just remember how insane that was to just shoot, especially the kids, just to take their photo and show them the back of the camera. It was like the most magical thing they'd ever seen. So that was like my first moment of like, wow, like this photography is like, this is such a universal language and such a powerful tool, to use to like connect with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, when I first like saw photography being used that way, the photographer was really, really good. And a lot of the people that we knew, like they just didn't own a mirror. And so they had never seen themselves, at least like recently. And just for them to have like a really good portrait of them taken and be like, hey, we love you and you're beautiful and you matter. Yeah. It was super cool. And I'm just like, what? All of this is from my little camera? Like I press a button through a thing that's made out of metal and glass, and then this is like a magical moment happens. So that is awesome. Very cool. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on. I'm glad that we could finally make it work. And where can people go to look at your work? I know you have Instagram, which I'll link up. Is there anywhere else that you would want people to check out?
Yeah, you can just look up ZoeRainPhoto.com. That's just my main website spot to go to.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. And hopefully I'm going to try and get Keatley on here soon. Yay. Just because I love that guy and his work is second to none. There's nobody shooting like him.
Yeah, he's out of this world.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Zoe. Have a great day.
Well, thanks. You too.
Man, it just feels so good to be back, and Zoe was the perfect episode to have coming back. She's got incredible insight, and like I said, she's just chill, man. Like she's got it going on, so I'm super excited about that. One more note, make sure you join the Patreon. Like, it's going to fill up, and because I know how many of you listen to the show and how many of you email me. Just come in, it's $3, and you can always cancel. It's like just a month or whatever. It's super cool, and let me know if you have any ideas about that and how to make it better. And the last thing, I have an Instagram. I have one for the show, but I also have an Instagram that I use for my work. And if you want to come say hi, it's just Mason Photography. So MASON Photography. And come say hi. Let's connect. The rest of this year, we're going to make it better than we could have ever imagined. We got to start planning for 2018, guys. And so let me know how I can help you with that. And we're going to hit it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.